1. The Silent Witness. There's a small park tucked away in a corner of the city that most people have forgotten. It's not a grand, sprawling park with manicured lawns and fountains that you see on postcards. It's a simple patch of green, a quiet breath in the middle of the city's constant noise, a place that feels like a well-kept secret. It's called Willow Creek Park, though the creek that once ran through it was diverted underground decades ago to make way for a new road. Now, all that remains is a gentle dip in the landscape and a few old willow trees that seem to remember a time when water flowed freely at their roots. Their branches hang low, like old men stroking their beards in contemplation. The park is a place for quiet moments. Office workers eat their lunch here in silence, their ties loosened, their faces turned towards the sun. Students from the nearby community college spread blankets on the grass, their textbooks forgotten as they watch the clouds drift by. Elderly residents take slow, careful walks along the gravel paths, their steps a steady, familiar rhythm in the park's daily life. It's a place where you can feel the city's pulse without being overwhelmed by it. A small island of calm in a sea of concrete and ambition. In the most secluded corner of this park, under the shade of the largest willow tree, sits a bench. It's not a modern, ergonomic bench made of recycled plastic and cold metal. It's an old, wooden bench made of thick planks of oak that have been weathered by years of sun, rain, and snow. The paint, once a cheerful forest green, has peeled and faded in patches, revealing the gray, splintered wood underneath, like skin showing through a threadbare coat. It's a humble object, easily overlooked, and it has been here for over 70 years. It was installed in the spring of 1952, a small gift to the community from a local benefactor who believed that every neighborhood needed a place for quiet contemplation. It has been a silent witness ever since, a quiet observer of the small, human dramas that have unfolded in this little patch of green. It has held the weight of countless people, each with their own story, their own joys, their own sorrows. It has absorbed the high-pitched laughter of children playing tag, the whispered secrets of lovers on a first date, and the silent, shoulder-shaking tears of the heartbroken. It is a keeper of stories, a silent historian of the unseen moments that make up a life, too. A patch of worn paint. The bench has a character all its own, a personality shaped by the lives it has touched. The wood is covered in a road map of memories, a chaotic archive of human impulse. There are names and initials carved into the slats, some so old and faded they are barely legible. Ghosts of words. A+E, 1954, reads one, the letters soft and rounded, the work of a patient hand. J.D. was here, 68, proclaims another, the carving sharp and defiant, a teenager's mark on the world. There are countless other marks, a crudely drawn heart, a peace sign from a different era, a series of tally marks whose meaning is lost to time. The armrests are worn smooth, polished to a dull sheen by the touch of thousands of hands. You can almost feel the echoes of the people who have rested their arms there, who have leaned back and sighed, who have watched the world go by from this exact spot. A nervous young man waiting for a blind date. A tired mother watching her children play. A writer staring into space, waiting for inspiration to strike. There's a particular spot on the seat, just to the right of the center, where the paint is completely worn away. The wood here is darker, stained by the years, and so smooth it feels like polished stone. This is the spot where people sit when they are alone. It's the spot for quiet contemplation, for difficult decisions, for wrestling with the kind of thoughts that can only be untangled in silence. It's the spot where a young woman once sat every day for a month, reading the same letter over and over again, her tears staining the pages until the ink ran. It's the spot where a man in a business suit once loosened his tie, took a deep breath, and made the phone call that would end his marriage. It's the spot where a young musician, his guitar case resting at his feet, composed the melody for a song that would one day be famous. A song about leaving home. It's a spot that has held more than its share of human emotion. A small, worn patch of wood that has absorbed the weight of the world, one person at a time. 3. The first, goodbye. Let's go back. Back to 1954. The bench was new then, the green paint still glossy, the wood still smelling of the forest it came from. The park was younger, the trees smaller, the city quieter. It was a different world, a world of handwritten letters and phone calls that had to be made from a booth on the corner. It was a world of promises, of futures that seemed both certain and terrifyingly unknown. And on a crisp autumn afternoon, a young couple sat on this bench, their hands clasped tightly together. Their names were Arthur and Eleanor. Arthur was a dreamer, a young man with a quick smile and a restless heart. He wanted to see the world, to have adventures, to live a life that was bigger than the small neighborhood he had grown up in. He worked at the local hardware store, a job he was good at, but that felt like a cage. Eleanor was his anchor, his home. She was quiet and steady, with a gentle laugh and eyes that saw the good in everyone. She worked at the library, a job she loved, surrounded by the stories of other people's lives. They had been in love since they were teenagers, a classic small-town love story that everyone in the neighborhood had watched unfold. But Arthur had been offered a job, a chance to work on an oil rig in a faraway country, a place with a name that sounded like a song. It was a chance to make enough money, to build a life for them, to buy a house with a small yard, to give her everything he thought she deserved. They sat on the bench for hours, not saying much. The silence was filled with everything they couldn't bring themselves to say. The fear of being apart, the uncertainty of the future, the quiet, desperate hope that their love would be strong enough to survive the distance. He talked about the money they would save, the places they would go when he came back. She listened, her head resting on his shoulder, her heart a tight knot in her chest. She didn't want him to go, but she knew she couldn't ask him to stay. To do so would be to clip his wings, to cage the very spirit she had fallen in love with. Finally, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Arthur pulled out a small pocket knife. With slow, careful movements, he carved their initials into the fresh paint of the bench. A+E, 1954. "So, you'll have a place to wait for me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So, you'll know I'm coming back." It was a promise, a declaration, a desperate attempt to leave a piece of themselves in this place, to mark their love on the world. It was their first real goodbye, and the bench held it, absorbed it, became a part of it for a mother's hope. 20 years later, in the mid-1970s, the bench had aged. The paint was starting to peel. The initials A+E were faded, but still visible, a faint scar on the wood. The world had changed. The city was louder, faster, more complicated. And on this bench, another kind of goodbye was taking place. A slower, more painful one. Her name was Sarah, and she was a mother. Her son, David, had run away from home a month earlier. He was 16, a good kid who had fallen in with the wrong crowd, who had started to drift away from her. His silence, a wall she couldn't seem to break through. He had started wearing his hair long, listening to music she didn't understand, and talking about things like freedom and finding himself. One morning, she woke up to find his bed empty, and a note on the kitchen table. "I need to find my own way," it said. "Don't worry about me." Every Sunday afternoon, Sarah would come to this park, to this bench. It was the last place she had seen him. They had had an argument, a stupid argument about his grades, about his friends, about the future. He had yelled, she had yelled, and he had stormed off, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. She had sat on this bench, her heart aching, waiting for him to come back, to apologize, to be her little boy again. He never did. So now, she came here to wait. She would sit on the bench, in the spot just to the right of the center, and she would talk to him as if he were sitting right there beside her. She would tell him about her week, about the funny thing the cat did, about the neighbor's new baby. She would tell him she loved him, that she missed him, that the house was too quiet without him. It was a one-sided conversation, a monologue of hope and heartbreak. Her goodbyes weren't a single, dramatic event. They were a slow, weekly ritual, a letting go that she had to do over and over again, a goodbye to the boy he had been, and a prayer for the man she hoped he would become. 5. The end of a friendship. Fast forward to the late 1990s. The bench is now a veteran of the park, a familiar, comforting presence. The city is a whirlwind of new technology, of beepers and dial-up internet, and the promise of a new millennium. And on a cool spring evening, two best friends sat on the bench, a familiar silence hanging between them. Chloe and Marcus had grown up together, their houses next door to each other, their childhoods a shared landscape of scraped knees, secret forts, and summer nights spent catching fireflies. They had been inseparable, two halves of a single whole. They had sat on this bench countless times, sharing secrets, planning their futures, laughing until their stomachs hurt. This bench had been the backdrop to their entire lives. But tonight was different. They were 18, on the cusp of adulthood, and their paths were diverging. Chloe was heading to a university on the other side of the country, a place of ivy-covered buildings and intellectual promise. Marcus was staying home, taking over his father's garage, his future laid out for him in a world of grease and steel. They had tried to pretend that nothing would change, that they would still be the same Chloe and Marcus. But they both knew it wasn't true. The silence between them was filled with the weight of unspoken goodbyes, of a shared history that was coming to an end. "We'll write," Chloe said, her voice too bright, too cheerful. "We'll call." "Yeah," Marcus said, his eyes fixed on a crack in the pavement. "We will." But they both knew the letters would become less frequent, the phone calls shorter, their lives slowly, inevitably, pulling them apart. It was a goodbye not to each other, but to the shared world they had inhabited for so long. It was a goodbye to childhood, to the easy intimacy of a friendship that had never been tested by distance or time. They sat there for another hour, watching the sky turn from blue to purple to black, the silence between them a heavy, comfortable blanket, a final, shared moment before they stepped into their separate futures. 6. Echoes and whispers. The bench has held more stories than it can count, more goodbyes than it can remember. It has been a silent witness to the small, everyday partings that make up the fabric of our lives. It has felt the trembling of a young boy leaving his mother's side for his first day of school, his small hand clutching a superhero lunchbox, his heart a mixture of terror and excitement. It has held the weight of an old man, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, as he whispered a final goodbye to his old, faithful dog, the dog's head resting in his lap, its breathing slow and shallow. It has been a temporary home for a tourist, a young woman with a backpack and a map, who sat on the bench for an hour, writing in her journal, saying goodbye to a city that had captured her heart, a city she knew she might never see again. It has heard the whispered goodbyes of lovers ending an affair, the tearful goodbyes of a family moving to a new city, the quiet, internal goodbyes of people letting go of old dreams to make room for new ones. Each goodbye, no matter how big or small, has left its mark, its echo, its whisper in the wood. The bench is a library of these moments, a collection of endings and beginnings, a silent testament to the constant, flowing river of human experience. 7. The bench. Today and now. We are back in the present. The bench is still here, under the willow tree, a little more weathered, a little more worn, but still standing. A young woman is sitting on it, in the spot just to the right of the center. She is crying softly, her shoulders shaking, her phone clutched in her hand. It's a modern goodbye. A relationship ended with a text message, a love story deleted with the swipe of a finger. She sits there for a long time, lost in her own private storm of grief and anger and confusion. After a while, an elderly man with a kind face and slow, deliberate movements sits down on the other end of the bench. It's Arthur. He is in his 90s now, his hair white, his hands gnarled with age. He comes to this park every day, to this bench. He doesn't say anything to the young woman. He just sits, his presence a quiet, comforting anchor in her sea of turmoil. He looks at the bench, at the faded carvings, and with a trembling finger, he traces the letters he carved so long ago. A+E. Eleanor had waited for him. He had come back, and they had built a life together, a life of love and laughter and shared dreams. She had been gone for 10 years now, and he missed her every day. His visits to the bench were a way of saying hello and a way of saying goodbye, all at the same time. He looked at the young woman, her face buried in her hands, and he remembered what it felt like to be young and heartbroken, to feel like the world was ending. He didn't offer her any advice. He just sat with her in the shared silence, a silent acknowledgement of her pain. 8. A place of beginnings. The young woman's sobs eventually subside. She takes a shaky breath, wipes her eyes, and looks up. She notices the old man for the first time, sees the gentle kindness in his eyes. He gives her a small, understanding smile. She doesn't know his story, and he doesn't know hers. But in that shared moment of silence, on that old, weathered bench, there is a connection, a sense of shared humanity. She takes another deep breath, a breath of resolve, and stands up. The goodbye she has just experienced is painful, but it is not the end of her story. It is the beginning of a new chapter. As she walks away, she feels a little lighter, a little stronger, as if the bench has taken some of her sadness and held it for her. The bench remains, a silent keeper of stories. It has heard too many goodbyes, yes, but it has also been a place of new beginnings. It is a reminder that every ending is also a starting point, that every goodbye makes room for a new hello. It is a testament to the resilience of the human heart, to our ability to love, to lose, and to love again. It is a quiet, unassuming object in a forgotten corner of a park, but it holds within its worn, wooden slats the whole, beautiful, heartbreaking story of us. My name is May, and this is where what you don't see becomes what you feel.